I'm going to call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call whenever you're ready?
Mr. Ackerson?
Here.
Ms. Billman? Here. Mr. Fell?
Here.
Mr. Fitch?
Here.
Mr. Hopkins? Ms. Wadrago? Mr. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Weisskopf?
Here.
Ms. Yu?
We do have a quorum, and before we get into the agenda here, I'd like to introduce our newest Plan Commissioner, Mr. Jonah Weisskopf. Yawning is allowed, sleeping is not allowed. So are there any changes to the agenda?
Not really, other than the two continued public hearings and the old business item are all pertaining to the same proposed development. So we might want to present them together, but ask you to perhaps vote on them separately. In particular, vote on the plat separately, since that one does not go to council. But it might be a good idea just to vote on each of the others separately as well.
Yes, my intention was to discuss them together and then vote separately. So thank you. Minutes from the August 9th, 2018 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Have any motions?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Turner,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Ackerson. Any changes to the minutes? We'll do this on a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The meetings are approved. The minutes are approved. Do we have any communications? Nope.
No.
Now we have two continued public hearings and a case of old business, as Ms. Pearson mentioned, and we will consider these together and then vote separately, hopefully at the end of the evening. We have Plan Case 2018 A01 and 2347 M18, Proposed Annexation Agreement between the City, the Judy Heimberger Trust, and Trinitas Development to include rezoning of approximately 8.16 acre parcel from County I-2 Heavy Industry to City R4, medium density multifamily residential located east of North Oak Street between Bradley Avenue and Kenyon Road. We also have Plan Case 2348 M18, a request by Trinitas Development to rezone approximately 11.33 acre parcel from R3 single and two-family residential to R4 multifamily residential. That's north of Carver Drive and south of Federal Drive. And then those proposals are to make way for the plat that we're going to look at in Plan Case 2349 S18, Union Gardens preliminary plat.
Okay.
So, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, good evening. I'm just going to go ahead and start by pulling up this map so it'll make more sense. Okay, so this is part of a series of requests by Trinitas Development that would allow them to develop a 40-acre farmland site into approximately 400 multifamily units, and those would be townhouse and duplex units. So looking at the map on your screen, Site A on the east is already in the city of Urbana, and there's a request to rezone that parcel from R3, which is single and two-family residential, to R4, which is medium density multiple family and residential. Site B is in the county currently, and the request is to annex that property and to rezone it to R4 as well. Site C is in Champaign, and Trinitas has requested a rezoning from SF1, which is single family, to MF1, which is low density multifamily. Also, as the chair mentioned, there is a preliminary plat request for the entire site, which is going through you all and went through the Plan Commission at Champaign last night and was approved. So this site has been farmland for as far back as city records go, and as I mentioned, Trinitas wants to develop it with townhouses and duplexes. So if you look at Exhibit A, if you're following along at home, or if you're looking at the screen in front of you, So the site is north of Bradley Avenue, which is sort of on the south, or on the bottom of your picture. So Bradley Avenue on the south, with the neighborhoods in between. There's Oak Street to the west, Federal Drive with some industrial properties to the north, and then a little further north is Kenyon Road. The surrounding land uses to the north is mostly commercial and industrial. There is one single-family home located over on Oak Street. Thinking of Urbana streets right now, not Champaign streets. And then to the south, is mostly single-family homes, and there are some townhouses in the Douglas Square neighborhood to the southwest of the site. There's also a couple of churches in the area. Just for perspective, I threw in a couple of shots of the site. So it looks like my north arrow got cut off, kind of. You can kind of see it in the top right. So we're looking northeast on this view. So here's the site. You can see I-74 to the north, the industrial area sort of northeast of the site here, and then those neighborhoods I was just talking about here. And then looking south and slightly west, you'll see that it's located roughly 2 miles from campus. I think it's just under 2 miles from campus. So the site could serve students and workers at the university as well. With respect to zoning, as I mentioned, the top parcel, which we're calling Site B, is I-2 in the county, requested to be rezoned to R4. Site A on the east is R3, also requested to be rezoned to R4. And then that site over in Champaign is currently single family and is requested to be multifamily. Surrounding zones, you have multifamily to the southwest. You also have single family to the south, and then also multifamily to the east, and then the industrial zones to the north. Looking at the preliminary plat, so this, hopefully you can see it pretty well, and this shows the layout of the site, how it would connect to the existing streets, and and the where the buildings and everything would be. So let's see. There we go. So the preliminary plat would divide the site into 13 lots, which is where the townhouses and duplexes would be. And then there would be 4 outlots that would contain the access drives for the site. The main entrance would be on the west side. There's 2 connections to what will be a new extension of 4th Street. So the plan, as you can kind of see on here, is to extend 4th Street north, then have 2 connections to the site coming in to the east, and then Oak Street would be south of this northern connection. Oak Street would be vacated. It's in pretty poor shape, as is, if you've ever been up there. So I think Champaign would be happy to get that off their hands. And then other connections that would be made would be a connection to 5th Street going south, then over here a connection to Carver Drive, and then a connection north to Federal Drive. And from a planning perspective, it's nice to have connections. It's nice to have multiple connections. Our emergency responders are also excited to have connections from multiple points. Police and fire like to have really as many ways as you can access a site as possible. So they were really happy to see connections, for instance, off of Carver Drive and Federal. One last thing that I wanted to point out. So this area that I've highlighted in green, those would be the areas dedicated for public streets. So you'd have a street coming east from the entrance on 4th Street. That would be dedicated all the way to Federal Drive. And then a portion of the 5th Street extension would also be public right-of-way, would be a public street. The other streets that you see on the plat would be for internal circulation, as you see at many multifamily complexes. Also, I think one final note on the plat is that the Trinitas did conduct a traffic impact analysis, and it showed that no new stoplights or other public infrastructure would need to be installed, for instance, along Bradley, due to any new traffic. The Urbana Comprehensive Plan identifies Site A as being an institutional use for the future land use. I don't have a map that I can show of that. Apologize for that. If you look in your memos, it's Exhibit C. Site B has no designation in the comp plan. It was outside of the city, and it doesn't find its way onto any of the maps. So at the time when the comp plan was drafted, the Church of the Living God had a conditional use permit that was granted in 2002 for them to put a church on the whole of Site A. They never exercised that permit, and they ended up locating down here at the southwest portion of this map. So that site would not feasibly be used for institutional uses going forward. And with respect to the other surrounding future land uses and existing land uses, we feel that multifamily residential would be quite compatible. Again, you have single-family uses to the south, multifamily uses to the south and west, industrial uses to the north, and multifamily uses to the east. In addition, the plans to use the site for multifamily would be consistent with a number of comprehensive plan goals and objectives. I won't go through all those. You can find them in your memo, starting about page 3. With respect to rezoning, we have a series of evaluation criteria that we look at for each rezoning case. I'm not going to go through each of those, except to say that staff feels that this proposal is consistent with those evaluation criteria. I'd be happy to discuss those if you have any questions about them, but we have outlined our reasons in the staff memo. So that concludes my report. We do have a staff recommendation would be to approve the cases. Let me read those off here. To recommend approval of cases 2018A01 and 2347M18, and plan case 2348M18. We would recommend a recommendation of approval for those two cases. And then in the case, the preliminary plat case, plan case 2349S18, we would recommend approval of the preliminary plat.
Mr. Garcia. Any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Garcia? Mr. Fell?
Yeah, several. My first question, which perhaps is for the developer, this in Urbana, this is zoned R3.
The eastern portion is zoned R3, that's correct.
Okay, they want to put duplexes and townhomes on here, which fits there. Why do we need to rezone it?
Townhomes,
Can't put a townhome in an R3 district?
You cannot put a townhome in an R3 district, and also a duplex, yes, works as a use in that
A
district.
townhome is a single-family residence.
Right, but if you put more than one of those on a lot, then it is considered multifamily from a zoning perspective, and they did not intend to subdivide this into 400 individual lots.
Okay, interesting. In Champaign, it's not considered that. Has the county or Champaign done their work on this yet? And what happens if either one or both of those don't approve this, and now our fire department doesn't have all the stuff they want, and everything like that happens?
Mm-hmm. So The cases did go to the Champaign Plan Commission last night, and they recommended unanimously to approve the rezoning and also unanimously to approve the preliminary plat. I don't think this needs to go to the county for any action.
Okay, well, what happens if Champaign doesn't approve it? It's not approved yet, so.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it's a chicken or the egg thing. One of us would have to, either Urbana or Champaign would have to approve it first in any case, so I suppose they could ask the same thing.
Well, I guess the
You know,
point of my question is, what if they don't approve it? Obviously, we can't approve a plat that might not work.
Yeah, understood. I guess that plat
We
would
can
be...
approve it conditionally?
Well,
I mean,
it's-
a
I
conditional
had a
approval?
question along those lines, too.
Mhm.
So maybe point of process on a plat. So this is the preliminary plat. The final plat will come back? Is that correct?
Yeah, the final
Yeah.
plat would come in short order to the city council.
So obviously, if something fell through, the plat would be, as you said, nullified.
Correct, and we
Right,
have...
but I guess my point is more, even if we get to the point of a final plat, Champaign could not approve it.
Yeah.
So I guess as a question to staff, is it logical to approve this with a condition that we need to revisit it if Champaign doesn't approve it?
I think we could add that condition to the, when we get to the plat.
Okay.
Don't you?
Well, I will say that a final plat, by state statute, if it meets the requirements, must be approved, a final plat. So if you're talking about a final plat, that's down the road, but it's much like a building permit in that if it matches the rules, it must be
Well,
approved.
no, I understand that, but more my concern is some of what we've been told, that the public safety people have reviewed this and are happy with it, and there's a potential that, I mean, obviously very slight potential, I don't think it's going to happen, but a potential that they're not going to be happy with it if Champaign doesn't approve it and they can't drive around and we have to do other things.
Well, if there is a preliminary plat that is revised significantly, then yes, it would need to go back through the approving body. If it's a little tweak here and there of a lot line, then no, we're not going
Right.
to bring that back. But
Okay.
if there's a significant change, then yeah, it would need to be reapproved, and that could be done concurrently with the final plat approval.
Okay. The main point of that question is staff is not concerned about that, correct? Overly concerned about this.
Staff is not overly concerned about who approves what first. We've been in close communication with Champaign staff throughout the process. We got a good indication from the Champaign Planning Commission last night. And the order that we're doing this in, we're actually adding a little bit of an extra step on our end just to, make sure all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. We're taking the annexation agreement and the rezoning, as well as the annexation petition, to committee the whole next week for then presumably council consideration the following week, which is going to be the day before Champaign City Council, if I've got my math right. So Champaign City Council will know what the Urbana City Council is thinking a full week before they even meet. So there's a lot of communication both on the staff level as well as what will be on the elected level.
Okay.
Further questions?
Next
Mr.
point. Why are we not connecting at Dory Miller Drive? Is that what it's called? There's a
Mhm.
cul-de-sac on the subject property.
Yeah, we had discussed that, but if you look on, well, you can see it well on this map as
It's a little
as well as
offset.
any.
Is that the reason?
Yeah,
Mm.
there's not really a direct connection to Bradley, so it's not really. There we go. And there's not a connection
Mhm.
here to Bradley,
Okay.
so it's kind of an offset. It would be a roundabout way to get into there, just to serve a few of the units that are back there.
Okay. I assume that the petitioner is paying for infrastructure? Is the city of Urbana paying for the public street that's getting built, or is the developer paying for the public street? And
As is the case with this level of public street, it is up to the developer to construct. Ultimately, they turn it over to the city, and it's our responsibility to maintain, but public streets are constructed by the developer.
Okay. Last point, which is, I think, a minor one. The little church that sticks up in there, their parking lot is going to be non-conforming when they're built around. Are we going to force the church to, well, I guess it's in Champaign, so, well, part of it faces Urbana. What do we do with that?
Well,
They have to screen their parking. Right now, they
Yeah.
don't, their parking is not screened.
sure, but we can't retroactively force compliance on the church. If their land,
Okay.
if the land next door is developed, we can't say, oh, now you have to put in screening.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's it for now.
Mr. Fell?
Thanks.
Any further questions for Mr. Garcia? Mr. Turner?
This is just out of curiosity. Why annex to Urbana and not Champaign, the
That-
7B area?
Yeah, that is a great question. So this dates back to a 1990 boundary agreement that the two cities entered into. And so since 1990, that area was designated to go to Urbana at some day. And if you see, there's already parts of Urbana up here. So it's not totally, if this were Champaign and this were Champaign, then maybe it would be a little odd, but great question.
Ms. Billen?
Can you switch to the plat map?
I can, yeah.
What are the open spaces on this, especially lots 1, 4, and 8?
I might need to pull up my, maybe, I don't know if I can zoom on this, can I? I think what you're talking about are probably detention ponds for stormwater. Let me see if I have a...
Can I ask sort of a follow-up while you're looking that up? What's the big building that's sort of right in the middle above their roundabout?
According to the preliminary plat, and you can't really read it,
says
it's the
clubhouse.
clubhouse.
Are you talking about the one at the extreme north, Ms. Billman, and the one on the east?
Yeah, the long rectangle on the east?
And the one that looks like home plate?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're detention.
Okay. Is that typical to have detention ponds in the middle of these kind of residential areas?
Yeah,
You have to.
I'd say it is.
Well, I understand it. It just kind of scares me. Okay, and is this kind of additional housing needed?
I guess I'll let the developer answer that. I mean, the short answer is if they think
must be.
Yeah.
They think it is. They think it is, yeah. Any further questions for Mr. Garcia? I do have one question pertaining to the condition on the plat, and I might as well ask it now.
Yes.
It said that you were to receive additional, if the petitioner shall address any outstanding comments from city staff or from outside agencies on or before August 24th, 2018. So I assume that was,
Well, and then if we sent out a supplementary memo last week, we had to resend the plat because we didn't include some pages that we should have. So the new date was actually September 4th, but we didn't receive any substantial comments even up to September 4th. So
so essentially this condition is no longer relevant.
it's not terribly relevant.
I mean, the plat would need to change a little bit in order to address those comments,
Oh,
add
okay.
a note, change this note, that kind of
Okay,
thing.
so we need to leave it in there.
It just, at least it keeps the record so that in 20 years, when we look at the plat that was attached to your Plan Commission memo,
It's not
we don't
exactly
think
the
that's,
same, yeah. Okay, great. All right, Mr. Garcia, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I would remind everybody of the procedures for a public hearing. The petitioner will present their case. We may ask questions. Following that, anyone who is in favor of the proposal will be allowed to address the Plan Commission. Following that, anyone opposed to the proposal will be allowed to address the Plan Commission. Finally, the petitioner may rebut, and then we will close the public hearing and go into discussion and possibly vote. So if the petitioner wishes to come up, and if you could just state your name and sign the register there.
All right, my name's Kimberly Hansen. Can you all hear me well? Okay. All right. So thank you, Kevin. That was really great. Some of this information is going to be repeat because he did such a great job, but I'll go ahead and give it because it doesn't hurt to visualize this a bit more. So I'm excited to be here tonight to tell you a little bit about our proposed development, which is Union Gardens, and that's a play on words with the site being at the intersection of Champaign and Urbana. So first I want to tell you a little bit about the company that I'm representing today. Trinitas is a 30-year-old company based in Lafayette, Indiana, that's near Purdue University, and we specialize in multifamily development. So we design and construct our properties to be managed by our internal property management company, and we take time to design and build projects that we can maintain in our portfolio. So we pride ourselves on the quality of our projects in both appearance and operations. And throughout this presentation, you will see pictures of existing developments that we have. So our team includes experienced professionals both within and external to the organization. So a number of people are here with me today. Again, I'm Kimberly Hansen. I'm a manager of design and development. Jeff Knabel is a project executive. Marcia Diedeker is an assistant regional director of property management. In addition, Nick Varchetto, our civil engineer from Engineering Resource Associates, is here, and Jeremy Chapman, who is our traffic engineer with Structure Point. So this probably looks familiar, but I'll just go over the location again. This is an aerial. Our official address will be 1402 North 4th Street. The area outlined in green will be Urbana, and then the area in red is Champaign. So we're focused on the green tonight. So why are we here? We are seeking the following, and this is also probably a familiar picture. We got this from the report from staff. We are seeking recommendation for rezone of Site A from R3 to R4, as well as a recommendation for annexation and rezone of Site B from I2 to R4, as well as approval of our preliminary plat. So now I'd like to tell you some more about our concept. So to the right there, you can see our conceptual site plan. So this will give you a better visual of what I'm about to describe. In total, we have 40.6 acres. We are proposing 406 units, or 10 units per acre. There'll be over 13 acres of green space. It will be duplexes and townhomes. Our target demographic is 20 to 30-year-olds. There'll be a mix of 1 to 4 bedroom units, ample parking, and this site benefits from being close to existing transit lines. We'll be constructing this in 2 phases. There will be a clubhouse with luxury amenities to include a pool, volleyball court, and basketball court. As we designed this, we focused on connectivity, so there's sidewalks throughout, as well as ensuring that our design complements existing neighborhood character, so we'll have front porches and rear yards. Throughout this process, we worked with city staff in both municipalities, the Church of Living God, and neighbors to design a development and the 4th Street extension, which will serve as the main access point into our development. So we took a look at the comprehensive plan, and we do believe we are consistent with it. Our development will encourage compact, contiguous, and sustainable growth patterns, enhance the existing community, promote infill development, increase a diverse housing supply in the area, as well as promote a broad tax base. This site is well suited for this proposed use, and rezoning of parcels will likely have little impact on neighboring property values. So Kevin went over this a little bit, but I will just describe it again. Our main access point will be off 4th Street. We will also have connections at 5th Street and a connection to Carver Drive, as well as Federal Drive to the north. So the next few slides will show you what this development will look like. We have constructed a similar development in Oxford, Ohio, so a lot of the pictures come from there. This is what the duplexes will look like. This is an aerial of that development in Oxford, Ohio. We've got duplexes in the front, townhomes in the back. And this is another aerial that shows the neighborhood feel that we are trying to design. These are the townhomes. And this is a snapshot of what the clubhouse will look like. So we have luxury amenities. You can see the pool there, the gym, as well as pictures of the gathering areas. So property management is something we take seriously at Trinitas. We have a Residence Life program with a purposeful focus on community, academics, and socialization. We have both a full-time maintenance staff and full-time office staff. We operate property shuttles to and from university campus and local points of interest. And we also have an on-site courtesy officer to patrol the community and respond to calls after hours. So as we were looking at the concept, we held 2 community open houses at the Church of the Living God right by the site. Those were April 3rd and August 6th of this year. It provided an opportunity to speak with neighborhood residents about our plan and solicit feedback. We had approximately 6 community members attend each meeting. And some of the feedback we received is that there's a need for additional housing in the area. There was a positive response to the design of duplexes and townhomes, and a strong interest in the extension of 4th Street. Lastly, I do want to let everyone know that we have an outreach platform for community engagement in the development process that we are utilizing. It's called Co-Urbanize. You can either go to the URL there or visit courbanize.com. It's a way for us to update everyone throughout the process and provide information on a real-time basis rather than just waiting for these public forums. So we encourage people to log online and leave comments and questions for us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Hanson? Mr. Fell?
I don't know if you'll be able to answer these, but I'm going to ask anyway.
I will try.
Has your team talked to the building safety departments in Champaign and Urbana? Because you have a couple buildings that are in both cities,
Yes.
and that's not going to work very well. Can you go back to your townhouse
Sure.
thing there? So I'm just wondering if you've talked to them about, so that townhouse will not work in Champaign. You won't be able to build that in Champaign. And I can talk to your people afterwards. I mean, if you don't need to get into it now. But,
Okay, sure.
but there are things that are very different in each city. I'm just wondering how you resolve those. Parking spaces aren't the same size. You'd have a different number of accessible, or, well, you don't have any accessible units required because you don't have that. But you have some very different zoning and building safety requirements in each city. So how are you going to resolve those issues? Or have you worked on that?
So we did have a joint meeting with staff from Champaign and Urbana because we were aware of this from the beginning. And perhaps Kevin was at that meeting, so perhaps he could speak a little bit to it. But the way it was decided is that we were going to design it to whichever of the standards would be, I don't know the best way to describe it,
Let's just say more strict.
stricter.
Talk to Champaign.
And then
then.
we would continue. We would continually make sure everybody's on board with this. But yeah, we've been aware of that. As far as the
no,
buildings that
I'm-
straddle the line,
Clarify. You're willing to build all of this to the Champaign standards?
yes,
Okay.
yes. As far as the buildings that straddle the lines, my understanding is we were going to look at square footage, and it will be a fun task, but we will be
So
splitting those buildings.
you are actually going to try to have a building that's half in Champaign and half in Urbana.
We are.
How do we tax that?
That was actually a topic of conversation at one of our internal meetings, and I don't know that we've gotten our comments back to you, but we do need to talk about that.
Okay.
That'll do for now.
Mr. Ackerson?
So in looking at this, we see a lot of building around here, and it looks like it's primarily oriented towards university students.
Right.
I look at this, and I don't just see university students. I see young professionals, potentially young families starting out. So my questions have to do with, could you tell me a little bit more about green space? Do you anticipate play area for children, or are you thinking it's just going to be single people? expand upon that a little bit. You see where my train of thought is going.
Absolutely. So we are targeting 20 to 30-year-olds, and in that age group, we are expecting young professionals and certainly families that might be starting out. We are still looking at the design of it, so if something, it would be preferred that we have a playground. That's something we can look at. Right now, we are just leaning towards the basketball and the volleyball court, the pools, certainly things that are appealing to families, but we did not look specifically at a playground yet.
So can you talk to me about green space in terms of will you have, you're going to have sidewalks, I assume, will there be
Yes.
walking trails? Will you tie in with bicycle trails, this kind of thing?
So we do have 13 acres of green space. There will be sidewalks providing connectivity. As far as designated bike lanes, we do not have that proposed right now. If that, again, if something like that would be desired, it's something we could look at.
Mr. Jackson? Any further questions? Mr. Weiskopf?
Yeah, I was curious in your guys' kind of analysis of this, what percentage of these units do you think will be students at the university?
I don't know that I have an answer for you on that. Something I can look into.
Yeah. 50?
Marcia is our in property management. She said probably higher than 50.
Higher than 50%?
Yeah.
Have you looked in that area to see how many students are living in that area?
So my colleagues on the acquisitions team
Yep.
would have done that. I do not have that data with me, though.
All right, anything further? I do have just, so these are going to be rental units, and so who will maintain the private streets?
We will.
The
Or-
property manager?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. That's it. Anything further? Thank you very much. Anyone wishing to address the Plan Commission who is in favor of this proposal, these proposals, can please feel free to do so now. Anyone who's not in favor of these proposals can address the Plan Commission, or anyone who just wants to address the Plan Commission in regard to the proposal. Yes, ma'am, please. And when you get there, if you could just tell us your name, and you both feel free to come. It's up to you.
My name is Jackie Curry, and I'm a homeowner up in the area in Crawford Park subdivision. And I'm not really for this because it's going to cause a lot of problems up there as far as all the traffic. We're a quiet little area, and once they start this construction, it's going to be a mess. I know it is. And I just feel like we don't need all that traffic up there.
Okay. So the layout of the streets you don't think is sufficient, or
The
just the
dead-
overall volume?
I'm sorry?
Or is it just the overall volume? Yeah.
The overall volume, I mean, it's just too much. I mean, you're opening up Carver Park, which is one of the main areas where we come in at. I mean, it's a little small subdivision anyway. There's only 50 homes up there. And you're going to put all this out there in the field. We're going to be, looks like sandwiched in the middle. And the kids aren't going to have anywhere to play because our kids play on the dead-end streets that you're referring, one of which you're referring to open up. And what are we supposed to do? I guess, just swallow and deal with it, right?
Well, you could do what you're doing now, which is come and register your thoughts, and we appreciate that.
Okay,
This
is not going to do any good because you guys are going to do what you want to do anyway.
Well, we'll see. We'll discuss it and see how it goes. I wouldn't be able to say right now whether it's going to be approved or not. We'll see about after we discuss it. And then there's still another step of the City Council. This is an advisory body. So we will make a recommendation to the City Council that they're not obligated to accept.
Okay.
And you'd have another chance to go talk to them as well.
Okay. Once this is approved, and I'm quite sure it will be, with the University here in Urbana and Champaign being all involved, how long of a period of time are we talking, the beginning of construction?
I'd have to ask the developer that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll bring them back up and they can address that. I'll ask them that question
Okay,
about when they'll begin and when they expect to finish.
okay. All right.
Any questions for Ms. Curry? Mr. Turner?
Have you talked to other of your neighbors about how their feelings are about this as well? Just kind of
I've
curious.
spoken with a few of them. I thought they would be here tonight, but it didn't turn out that way, so. I was hoping that they would, because there's power in numbers,
Yeah.
but me, like I said, if it's just be showing up by myself, I don't expect for my thoughts to be heard, so.
Well, your thoughts are certainly heard and appreciated. And you will have, no matter what happens tonight, this will go before the council. So if you're, I would talk to your concerned neighbors again and have them come talk to the council.
Okay.
And
Is
if you're a
there,
city excuse me, if you're a Champaign resident, I would also suggest that you talk to your Champaign representative.
Mhm.
That might be also a good.
Correct, yeah.
Is the neighborhood as a whole, are we safe, or do we have any reason to be, expect to get a surprise pop and say, oh, well, we need half of the neighborhood and tearing up homes like they did over there on Market Street?
Not under this proposal. There would not cut into your neighborhood. Maybe there'd be something else come along later, but not with this proposal.
Okay, because I'm the house right before the cornfield starts going out towards 74. So
Uh-huh.
I'm just wondering how close are they going to be to my house?
That's a good question, and I'll also address that with the developer. Can you point out where your house is?
I'm at 718 Bethune Court.
718
I'm right on the dead end.
Bethune Court.
I'm at the opposite dead end street where they're not opening up,
Okay.
where the old Francis Nelson used to be.
Okay, it looks like, well, it depends on how far, it depends on which part of that block you're in, whether the development will run right up to the edge or there's a little buffer in the middle of that block. So it really kind of depends exactly where your house is. Are you further to the east or further to the west?
I'm further to the east.
Yeah, could get pretty close there.
Yeah,
We'll
I'm
ask
right-
city staff what the required setback
My house is here, there's Dory Miller, and there's a house across the street, and we're right beside the cornfield.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask that for city staff, what the required setback is. There is a required setback in our zoning ordinance, so they can't get too close to you. And I was trying to look at the plat to see what kind of a, sort of a buffer they have drawn in down in there. Yeah, they do have it looks like they do have a cul-de-sac coming right down into that area on the east side. So what the setback is, I don't know, but we'll get that clarified. Anything further?
No.
Any questions? Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could ask anybody else wish to address the Plan Commission? I'll ask you to come back up, Ms. Hanson, and address the questions.
So the construction question?
Yeah, the construction question, when do you expect to begin? How long do you expect to, when do you plan to start opening the units? I assume you're going to roll the opening, as you said. It won't all open at once?
We plan to deliver our first phase in late summer of 2020, and our hope is to begin construction in the spring.
Okay. And what do you, what's the total timeline for all the phases?
I think we're still looking into that, but the bulk of it, or the first phase that would be opening, would be 2020.
2020 initial opening? Okay. Mr. Feld, did you have?
I sort of have a follow-up question to the traffic issue.
Sure.
Is looking at the plat map, and the reality of this entire complex is 90% of these people are going to be coming out 4th Street. You've had some kind of joint traffic meeting with Champaign and Urbana, and they're okay with the amount of traffic that's going to be barreling out of there? Because I go by there every day, and it's really crowded.
Yes, and that was part of why they asked us to complete the traffic impact analysis. If you want to know specifics about it, I can.
No, I don't
Jeremy
necessarily
can
need
certainly-
specifics. I want to know it's been addressed, because no one's going to come out anywhere else but on 4th Street.
Sure.
Except for very rare occasions. And
No,
fortunately for this body, that's in Champaign. So,
Yeah, I think we could use some more details about that. That would be great.
Sure.
Even though it is in Champaign, but it affects the whole development. Thanks, sir. If you could state your name.
Sure, my name is Jeremy Chapman.
She told us, but sorry.
That's fine. I understand you need it for the record.
Okay. So what's your question, Ms. Billman? Did you have a specific question?
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking that also it gets very congested, especially around railroad tracks. And I wonder what the impact
Yeah.
is going to be on that.
Well, so we did look at the railroad track, and the amount of traffic that's actually on those tracks, as far as backups that do occur, was negligible for the concern for the traffic that's generated with this site. We did.
wait, can I interject there a second?
Sure.
You studied the train situation there? I mean, literally, trains will block that track for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We did not directly study. We relied on information we received from Champaign staff.
Okay.
We asked them about it, and they said to not worry about it, essentially. But I do understand that I live in Terre Haute, Indiana, so if you're familiar with Terre Haute at all, I know all about trains blocking tracks for hours at a time.
Well, what happens there is when it starts to back up, people start to do U-turns and
Yes.
head down through Champaign and find an alternative route.
Correct.
Which
So
is 4th
we-
Street.
You're right. That's
Well,
right.
and again, so when we looked at where the traffic patterns would be, because we didn't just do a count, we did basically a modeling of the area to see where traffic would go in and out, and where the main generators would be, and how this site would connect to the cities. Again, we came to the same realization that 4th Street would be the primary usage, and the main flow of traffic would essentially be straight down 4th Street, because that is the main connector to campus.
That's right. Ms. Billman?
Has there been any consideration of putting in traffic signals there?
We looked at the numbers and the requirements, and because the development is offering the shuttle service to and from campus and points of interest, that gave us a reduction factor that we applied that then told us that a signal was not necessary. We did analyze that for those values.
You were looking at 4th and Bradley, or?
Yes,
Okay.
because
think
that
that-
was where almost all the traffic was going to come in and out.
Collect, yeah, exactly.
I
Ms.
just,
Billman?
I think, I just wondered how that would work, having a traffic signals right by the railroad tracks, but I'm sure that's been worked out in others.
Well, and because there isn't a signal necessary. But typically, if a signal ever were necessary in the future, Champaign deemed one necessary, you typically put in what is called a blank out. Basically, it's one of those signs that say, so if you're coming from the south heading north, for example, or if you're coming from the north heading south, it would more or less be a no turn allowed, and then traffic would only flow either straight through or be able to make a left or straight through north or make a right. So you would essentially prevent traffic from queuing and blocking your intersection.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Nope. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And so I think that is good. Thank you. And we'll close the public hearing now and start to discuss. Oh,
Just for
this-
clarification, close the public input part of the public hearing, the public hearing itself.
Correct. The public hearing is still open. You're right. Close the public input. That question was going to be for city staff. So the question of the cul-de-sac and the southeast portion of the development encroaching close to the neighborhood.
Right, so the minimum setback there would be 10 feet. And they did provide a preliminary planting plan, so a landscape
So,
plan.
yeah, I was going to
that
say
shows-
landscaping, screening.
It shows screening there. And I'm not sure, I can't scale this out to see how
No, yeah, I
far
agree.
that is.
But that screening would apply to the cul-de-sac as well. It looks like there's 2 townhomes or something on either side of the cul-de-sac. Are those duplexes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I printed mine on small paper. So, okay, well, I think maybe some further details on that. So you're thinking 10 feet with screening?
Correct.
Okay. And just whatever screening is required by the zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I
Do you know if
sort-
that's a fence or landscape or both?
Shrubs and trees shall be provided with 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 40 linear feet or fraction thereof. Or there could be an alternative plan to create a sufficient barrier. So, you know, there could be, if the neighbors wanted a fence and not the landscaping, then we could have that discussion. There's some flexibility possible here, but there needs to be screening.
Okay. Anything further on this
Yeah.
line of questioning?
Yeah, I have a couple minor questions about screening, I think. Is along, what street is that, Carver, where the little piece of the, I don't know if the city calls it a parking lot,
Oh, there's the screening.
that butts up to Carver? Does that have to be screened? Is that a parking lot? Basically, their road that you park on both sides of, that there aren't houses, or aren't buildings next to the existing buildings.
You're talking where it connects to Carver?
No, it's, what drive is it? 6th Street, I'm sorry, on 6th Street, on
Oh.
the, I don't know, northwest side of 6th Street. They have a whole bunch of parking there. Does that have to be screened? On their plat, they don't have any buildings between the parking and the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm still not seeing what you're talking about. Let me look at the... Why don't I go? Why don't I go
Right
up
over
there?
here.
Want me to show you?
Sure.
Oh, I see it,
I'll
yep.
show you on here.
On this guy?
Yep.
Right here. And that's parking, so do they have to screen that? Or do they have to screen that?
Well, there's no parking shown in that cul-de-sac, so that's...
No, it's along the street, I think.
Well, that's part of the question, is it belongs to the petitioner when they're done, right? It's not deeded over to the city of Urbana. It's not a building, it's not really a road. Do they have to screen it?
Driveways typically don't require screening.
That's kind of my obtuse point. It's not a driveway.
Well, if I could take a step back just for a second, because this site has a lot of different approvals, I want to kind of just review which each approval is for. So a preliminary plat, we rely on the subdivision ordinance. A plat needs to meet the requirements of the subdivision ordinance. So there's kind of that one thing. This portion of the site on the east is subject only to a rezoning, not to an annexation agreement. So technically, rezoning is not tied to a site plan, and so we can't place any conditions on a rezoning. I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So anything that's built needs to comply with the zoning ordinance. And then the other piece, with the annexation agreement and the rezoning, there's a little more latitude there. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the little chunks as you're looking at things.
All right, thank you. Anything further on that, Mr. Fell?
Nope.
Okay, any other comments, discussion in regard to this? Nope. Yeah. Or any motions or anything of that nature?
I guess I'll start out with opinion, I guess.
Sure.
is that I think that the development's a good idea. I think, I'll say some of the issues I brought up, which are more, I don't know, procedural issues, I guess, of how this thing's going to get done, are going to be really hard. But they've chosen to make them really hard, so it's okay with me.
We don't have too many of these that cross the city line.
I am a little concerned about how our city deals with a building that's half in our city and half not in our city. Who gets to call neighborhood services?
Well, as I mentioned before, that was a topic of discussion at an internal meeting and is a comment that we need to convey, which I think I just did, to the developers that there is a strong level of discomfort with that arrangement, and we need to talk about that for those very reasons.
So, along those lines, if we approve the preliminary plat and it requires something to move around so that it's not split, that would be reflected.
Well, the preliminary plat
It's not a site plan.
is not a site plan. It is designed to show the public infrastructure primarily so that we know where the streets are going, where things are kind of going. It's so that you get an idea on the structure of the development. It's definitely not a site plan. So a lot of plats don't even have buildings on them.
Sure.
Because they're just the lot lines and the infrastructure. So this is giving a lot more detail than your typical preliminary plat would.
And if there's a site plan, we have no opinion to render on that.
Unless it's in the portion that's subject to an annexation agreement, which there is, as I mentioned, much more leeway.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
No.
All right. Well, if we're done, Ms. Billman?
Is this our discussion portion?
It is.
We didn't get any input from the church along Bradley, and its impact.
Not tonight. Apparently, they were engaged in the process.
Mm.
That's it? Mr. Turner?
I agree that this certainly does really change the neighborhood here.
Oh, yeah.
And I also agree that it's kind of interesting. I think that we've discussed a bit in the past about a need for more housing for young professionals. And I think that this does have the potential to serve that population. I don't know, in terms of the number of students who will be interested in this or not. If it's 60% students, will a lot of young professionals want to live in this? Or does it become even greater number or percentage of students? Although it does seem like it's geared towards young professionals, and I work with a lot of young professionals at the university, and there is lack of housing for them, and this looks great for young professionals, to be quite honest. So I like this, but I do, certainly it changes the nature of this neighborhood significantly.
Mr. Ackerson?
I just want to build on that. When you say students, there's students and then there are students. Having worked like you, having worked in university a long time, if you're talking about a lot of undergrads, don't see it. If you're talking about graduate students who are also on their way to becoming or are at least young professionals, because you're not going to see undergrads renting townhouses.
No.
Those big buildings are already being built on campus or just off campus. And there's a question about whether we've got a glut in the market of that kind of housing. This housing is a little different from that. Now, the only thing that concerns me is they talk about anywhere from 1 to 4 bedrooms. So if you're talking about a lot of 3 and 4 bedroom units, that sounds more like undergrad apartments. I'm just sharing this so you guys can hear. If you're talking about duplexes and townhouses, I'm thinking grad students, young professionals, that and you're not all that far from the hospitals, which are our number 2 employer in town is Carl, and OSF is not that far down the road. So, but to build on the point, and the woman who's the only representative from her community, it does greatly change that community. So I would not want to adversely impact the community. I also would not want to not develop something and leave that community out there by itself. So, you need some kind of smart development down there. But it does, if I thought this was going to be yet another large group of undergrads, but you're throwing them all the way 2 miles up 4th Street, I would have concerns about it. But that's not how I'm seeing it. I don't know how others are seeing it.
Further elaboration? Mr. Weisskopf?
I think you're right. That's kind of why I asked. It's gonna be, it's not gonna be undergrads and as far as, on the one hand, you're taking this kind of vestige of a piece of land here sandwiched between the highway and, the end of that kind of development, those nice properties right there, those nice homes on Bradley. And really turning a 180 there. So, if they want to do it, right, kind of Andrew's point, or just overall, they're taking the risk. I just hope they haven't oversold themselves on the idea that there's going to be a ton of undergrad interest at all in being that far away. But I agree. I think grad students, postdocs, people who work at the university, shuttle service is a smart idea. But I think their challenge is going to be to create that appeal in a location that is far from Champaign-Urbana standards. Around here, everything is like 3 minutes away. And then you're right. While it's not in direct competition with that glut of housing is a reality, and so it's still going to be a fight for you guys to build a tenant base against all these other, 17 stories on campus town, another 500 beds over, just south of the university, between 3rd and 4th. So you have your work cut out for you. But I think it's generally true that the opportunity here is in that demographic that you guys are talking about. So I hope you all know what you're getting into as far as not relying and not thinking undergrads are going to want to partake in that distance from campus.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Turner?
I just wanted to reiterate a previous comment about kind of the use of the area and such. I really do like the green space and open space and such. But I think it would be interesting to think about a playground, or think about biking, bike racks, think about bike storage, think about pets. And we didn't talk about pets at all, but a lot of people have pets in this community. And even a little dog park area or some things of that sort could be really interesting to draw, I think, more grad students or younger professionals even to the area. So I just want to kind of reiterate some of those types of things.
All right, thank you, Mr. Turner. Anything further? Further discussion?
I'll make
Mr.
two
Feld?
kind of quick points. I kind of agree with the demographic that's going to live here, but I think we also might not quite be right, because we all thought the same thing about building apartments on Lincoln Avenue next to the interstate, right? And they're full of undergrad. Well, lots of undergrads live there, and it's a certain type of undergrad that lives there. And I think they might, while I agree, I think the overwhelming majority of people living here will not be university students. I think they'll get a fair amount of those. And the second item that I think that's been brought up that's a little bit of concern is how the traffic gets handled. And although I realize most of it's in Champaign, I think Champaign is, in this specific area, they're taking a very active role on what happens with the traffic, because they're redeveloping the whole area on the other side of the railroad tracks. The stoplights they put in at 4th Street, they've been there, I don't know, 10 years, but far as I know, they're the only ones in Champaign-Urbana that blink all the time. So there's a very active kind of observation of what the traffic is doing and how it's sort of morphing in this area. So I'm confident that the city of Champaign won't take a laissez-faire attitude about what's happening. So I think the traffic patterns don't overly concern me, because I think they're actively being addressed, or at least studied and will be addressed. So that's it.
Okay. Nothing further, we might be ready for a motion.
Do we need to move these
Well,
separate?
we're going to
separately?
move, good question. So what I'd like to have us do is move, first of all, the annexation and the related rezone to the annexation. I think we can move those at the same time. Then we'll move the second rezone, and finally, we'll move the plat. And vote 3 times.
Okay. Can I ask city staff a opinion question? Does city staff have a preference, or whether this is voted with a contingency of other people approving the plat, or is that not a concern to city staff?
If
I'm guessing it's not really a concern to city staff, so,
No, I mean, plats are pretty constrained in that unless you're requesting a waiver, you have to meet the rules.
okay.
So,
And city staff with kind of like when like a design review thing, you have the ability to make minor adjustments without coming back and asking for,
on a preliminary
Approval.
plat, yes, the final plat is supposed to, I can pull the exact language, but it probably reads something to the effect of, needs to be substantially the same as what was shown in the
all
preliminary
right.
plat.
But again, substantially lets them make certain minor adjustments to things that they need to make along the way.
Right.
Okay,
Changes in major points of connection might not be considered
okay.
a simple change, I'll put it
All right.
that way.
Okay? You ready? One at a time? Yep.
I will move that we, or make a motion, that we approve.
Forward.
Forward.
Recommendation
yeah.
for approval.
Okay, forward annexation case number 2018-A-01 and plan case number 2347-M-18 to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Fell, second by Mr. Ackerson. Any discussion on the motion? If we could have a roll call vote when you're ready, Madam Secretary?
Did that include the condition?
The condition, I understand, is just on the plat. I don't think that the city staff's recommendation for the annexation and the two
Okay.
plan cases are
Perfect.
without condition.
Ms. Billman?
Yes?
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerson?
Yes.
That motion is approved. You want to take the next one?
I make a motion that we forward plan case number 2348-M-18 to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Motion by Mr. Fell, second by Ms. Billman. Any discussion on the motion? We'll have a roll call vote when you're ready.
Mr. Fell?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerson?
Yes.
Ms. Billman?
Yes?
That motion is approved. And now the plat.
I will make a motion that we forward plan case number 23... Oh, we approve All right, whatever.
Yeah, this
We
one, that's
approve
right.
plan case number 2349-S-18 with no conditions.
Well, there is a
Oh,
condition
with the
suggested
city's
by
condi-
city
oh,
staff.
Yeah, I forgot that.
So the motion is for approval with the condition?
Yes, with the condition of city staff.
Great. Motion by Mr. Fell, second by Mr. Turner. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf?
Yes.
Mr. Eckerson?
Yes.
Ms. Billman? Yes. Mr. Fell?
Yes.
That motion is also approved. And with that, this public hearing is concluded. So when, city council's in 2 weeks? No?
First, we're taking the cases to a committee of the whole this coming
right.
Monday,
Okay.
and then they will go on the 17th to council.
Okay, great. You're not done till I let you go. Thank you very much for your testimony. We don't have any new public hearings or new business. Audience participation, if anyone wishes to address the Plan Commission on an issue that's not this case but is germane to planning? No? In that case, staff report?
Just wanted to provide an update. At your last meeting, the case that you considered was the Champaign County zoning text amendment to allow solar farms. The vote out of this body was to recommend that council not protest if there was a condition that was placed which would basically allow the city to have protest rights over a special use permit, with the caveat if it was legal to do so. The answer, it is not legal to do so. Since that meeting, so we did not forward that condition to City Council, but also since that meeting, staff got more information about the locations of the proposed solar farms, and you've probably read a little bit about it in the news. They are far away from our ETJ. Furthermore, to build one far from an electrical substation, we thought was economically not impossible, but probably impractical to do, and substations are around 5 to 5.5 miles away. So we did not foresee any giant solar farms that wanted to make any money anyway coming into our ETJ in the near future. So the council decided not to protest.
I'm just curious, is the university's 1 year, so do they have a substation?
I know that Marcus Ricci knows, but I do not know.
Just curious.
Sorry, we'll get back to you on that one.
Well, it's university land.
Great. We don't have a study session, therefore, we are adjourned.